In the 1800s, hysteria increased, involved using dark magic and curses. The community was fearful, and the police were on high alert. What people dismissed as devil worship, Voodooism in New Orleans, Louisiana. The religious community was harassed, arrested, and the religion was banned due to racism and ignorance. Hello, welcome back to my channel where I deep dive into true crime, paranormal phenomena, cults, and history. Without further ado, let's get into today's case. This is Freaky Friday, where I discuss cults, history, paranormal, and all things dark and morbid. This will be part of my Morbid history series. Today I am discussing the morbid history of Voodooism. Today's case takes place in New Orleans, Louisiana. New Orleans was a booming city on the Mississippi River near the Gulf of Mexico. It is nicknamed the Big Easy for its thriving nightlife. It is known for Mardi Gras, and its cuisine mixes African, French, and American food. So what is really voodoo? Voodoo is a religion that originated in Louisiana. In the 1700s, Africans were brought there and enslaved. Voodoo is a term that was derived from voodoo, meaning spirit or deity. I do want to mention in some cultures it's derogatory, like in Haiti, it's called Haitian voodoo. It is unknown whether any present ceremonies go back to all the rituals of the religion and may just be super secret. The main belief is that spirits affect daily life, which differs from Christian and Catholic views of God's impact on your life. Ceremonies were conducted usually in a room designated for that purpose. Altars were commonly done in these rooms with stone-filled bowls and portraits of Roman Catholic saints. Sacrifices were a common practice, although there was no real proof that they involved any humans. There were rumors that white children were abducted and sacrificed for rites. This was never proven, but no doubt it fueled racial bias against voodooism, and honestly it was probably made up by white people to kind of fuel this type of racism. Plates of food were left out, circled by a ring of coins. Candles were present during these rituals, combining Catholicism and Haitian voodoo. Weekly services similar to church services were held, called parterres. But how did voodoo come to Louisiana? Louisiana voodoo, as we know it, is a religion that originated in West Africa. Sometimes it is known as New Orleans voodoo or voodooism. New Orleans voodoo is a combination of African traditions and Creole culture. It merges French, Spanish, Catholic, and Native beliefs. In December 1681, 23 French Canadians and 18 indigenous people traveled from Fort Crèvecoeur, or modern-day Illinois, to explore the Mississippi River mouth. The weather conditions were treacherous because it was December in 1681. They traveled in 12 canoes, dragging them over the ice. On their expedition, they crossed paths with many native tribes. They made peace with tribes by offering gifts. The explorers arrived at the western mouth of the Mississippi River located at present-day Venice, Louisiana, on April 9, 1682. Sieur de La Salle formally took possession of the entire Mississippi River Valley. He named the territory Louisiana after King Louis XIV. This allowed them not to take ownership of the territory, but also to control towns and villages, mines, minerals, fisheries, rivers, ports, and the people. Louisiana extended from the Gulf of Mexico north to Canada, and from the Ohio and Mississippi rivers, west to the continental divide of the Rocky Mountains. So at one point took up a massive part of America. There was a cross attached to a tree and a lead pipe with the claim of the land inscribed on it, buried at the foot of the tree. In 1684, La Salle returned to France and was granted command of Louisiana. He sailed back to Louisiana, accompanied by 320 French colonists. They arrived on the coast of Texas, completely missing the mouth of the Mississippi River by 400 miles, where they built Fort St. Louis. In 1687, he was killed by members of the Exploration Party in a rebellion. This is when the colony ended, as colonists were either killed by natives or disease, or they returned to France. The Spanish destroyed what was left of the fort in 1688. In 1719, around 450 enslaved Africans were brought from a port in Ouida to the colony during transatlantic slave trade. Both French and Spanish colonists combined the enslaved West Africans' religious beliefs with folk Catholicism. This is what originated Louisiana voodoo. The earliest record of voodoo was in the 1730s. Antoine Simon de Page du Prat wrote about gris-gris, a voodoo talisman believed to ward off evil and bring the user good luck or misfortune to another person. There was an emergence of free Africans who began the religion of voodoo. There is no specific African group that is credited with voodooism. The early slaves came from the Bight of Benin, including the Yu-Fan and the Yoruba cultures. These cultures impacted the formation of the religion of voodoo. Senegambia, including the cultures of Barbara, Mandinka, Wolof, and Fula, were brought to Louisiana, even outnumbering the enslaved from Ouida. They practiced a combination of traditional religions and Islam. In 1763, the Spanish Empire took control and remained in power until 1803. Under the power of the Spanish, the economy flourished, but unfortunately, this also led to Africans being sent to work on plantations. With the new leadership, African slaves were brought to Louisiana from West Central Africa. Many of them were from the Bancongo culture. The religion of Bancongo had emerged in Catholic beliefs since the late 15th century. They were soon the dominant culture in Louisiana. Native American tribes such as the Natchez, Caddo, and Choctaw remained present in the Mississippi River Valley from the colonial period and throughout the 19th century. They began a trading relationship with the French and Spanish settlers. They also maintained a close relationship with the Africans, which is thought to have helped preserve African beliefs. This is because they both viewed spirits as being present. Africans used plants that natives introduced them to, such as sassafras and devil's shoestring. Usually in America, you hear about religions that are different than standard Christian beliefs being prosecuted. That was not really the case in voodooism, or at least at this point. The only recorded case at this time occurred to be known as the gris-gris case of 1773. A group of men were accused of using gris-gris to poison a plantation owner. This brings us to the Louisiana Purchase and the Haitian Revolution. In 1803, the United States acquired Louisiana from Napoleon Bonaparte through the Louisiana Purchase. The takeover led to an influx of Anglo-Americans. They were familiar with African traditions but were not accustomed to a fully developed African religion with its own beliefs. Basically, they were English-speaking minorities who were adapting to European culture. At the beginning of the 19th century, the Haitian Revolution overthrew the French colonial government and established independent republic. Almost 20,000 Francophone migrants from Saint Dominic arrived in the Mississippi River Valley. They were of African, European, and mixed descent. Many of the migrants would have been familiar with Haitian voodoo and influenced Louisiana voodoo as it came to be known. Spiritualism, which emerged in the Northeast United States, also influenced voodooism. The first meeting place of voodoo practitioners in New Orleans is thought to have been on an abandoned brickyard on Domain Street. Police would interrupt and disrupt the meetings, so they moved to Bayou St. John and to the shores of Lake Pontchartrain. Voodooism spread to African communities through the Mississippi River Valley, specifically in Missouri. Fears began to arise that voodooism might inspire a rebellion by enslaved Africans. In 1817, the municipality issued an ordinance prohibiting enslaved people from dancing on days other than Sunday and at locations not designated for such practices. A permitted location was Congo Square. The media began denouncing the religion using newspaper publications. Soon arrests involving practitioners in the 1850s and 1860s, mostly women. In April 1850, 8 were arrested and fined for attending a ceremony in Daphne Street. On June 17th, women were arrested, including Betsy Toledano. Betsy was a high priestess who was one of the many who engaged in a voodoo dance ceremony in St. Bernard Street. The reason for this arrest was that the ceremony mixed enslaved Africans and whites, which violated the law since it was illegal. A month later, the police raided Betsy's home on Conte Street and arrested Betsy among a group of others. Another group of women was arrested at the lake performing a ceremony. They ended up suing the police because police violated their First Amendment right to exercise religious freedom. By the time of the American Civil War, the Union Army occupied New Orleans. They sought to suppress voodoo. They were accused of using a ceremony involving free blacks to use voodoo to help the Confederacy. They broke up the ceremony. In 1863, there was a dance ceremony in Maris Street. Multiple women were arrested, but after 400 women protested outside the courthouse, the case was dropped. In the 1970s, when the state saw the Civil War, repression of voodoo was increased. White writers thought that voodoo rituals were facilitating interaction between Africans and white women. Lake Pontchartrain was the site of gatherings, but these declined after 1876. Authorities continued to buckle down on voodoo ceremonies in the 1880s and the 1890s. They used voodoo as evidence to prove that Africans were inferior to Europeans and supported the belief that legalized segregation was a necessity. By this point, practitioners began opening shops to sell religious items and to perform ceremonies. The religion was dominated by free women of color. The most prominent leader was the iconic Marie Laveau. She was portrayed by Angela Bassett on American Horror Story seasons Coven, Apocalypse, and the new season that's set to premiere this fall. This is actually what inspired this video. So I want to talk a little bit about Miss Laveau. Marie was born on September 10, 1801 in New Orleans, French Quarter in Louisiana. Luckily, she's born free. Her mother, Marguerite Dark-Antle, was free by the time Marie was born. She was of African, European, and Native American descent. She was not married when she gave birth to Marie, so the father is unknown. He was not listed on her baptism award, but is later thought to be Charles Lavaeu Trudeau, a white Louisiana and Creole, and he was a politician, or Charles Lavaeu, a free man of color. She married Jacques Paris, sometimes called Santiago Paris, on August 4th, 1819, right before her 18th birthday. Jacques was a free man who immigrated to New Orleans. They had two daughters, Felicity and Angela, who presumably died in their childhood. After Jacques passed away, Marie entered into a domestic partnership with a nobleman named Christopher Dominic Duminy de Gapelin. They are reported to have 15 children. There was only 7 on record. I know that she adopted a few children, so I think that the other 8 were adopted. Unfortunately, only 2 of the children survived into adulthood. This is not unheard of in the 1800s, but heartbreaking nonetheless. Marie and Chris stayed together until his death in 1855. She was a devout Catholic, even attended Mass and encouraged others to do the same. She helped the enslaved and escapees, adopted children, fed people in need, and nursed those sick from yellow fever. She opened up a beauty parlor and did the hair of the wealthiest families in New Orleans. This is shown in her American Horror Story season. She would listen to the rich ladies' gossip or their servants that she would cure. She used this information to enhance her image as a clairvoyant. She would give them practical advice and sell them gris charms. She was even believed to be consulted by politicians, lawyers, and businessmen before making decisions. By this point, she was the 3rd voodoo queen in New Orleans. Maintained her authority throughout her life. Her reign was challenged in 1850, but that attempt failed. On June 15, 1881, at the age of 79, Marie died peacefully in her home. Given her age and the time, I think it was natural causes and just old age. Voodoo believers visit her gravesite to offer gifts and pray to her spirit. They do this hopefully to receive favors faster. A weird thing that I read about was about the Misfits. This is a punk band out of New Jersey. They were doing a national tour when they stopped to record the instrumentals for their upcoming album. They were going through the St. Louis Cemetery, #1, looking for Marie's grave. They were arrested for trying to exhume her body. They bailed themselves out, skipped out on their court date, and continued their tour in Florida. I do not think they ever got any court issue with this because I could not find it. They claimed that they were just paying their respect. In 2013, someone poured pink paint over her tomb. They attempted to remove it with pressure washing to keep it intact. However, it damaged the tomb. Historical experts slammed them, saying it was better to use paint stripper. In 2014, Save Our Cemeteries paid to restore her tomb. They removed the broken plaster, rebuilt the roof, and added coats of new planter with lime. Some idiots scratched X's into the new planter. This is why we can't have nice things. On March 1st, 2015, the access to the cemetery was restricted to private viewings only. You must have a tour guide present. Another prominent practitioner was John Montate. He is known as Dr. John and Bayou John. He was a free man who sold cures and used his earnings to purchase several slaves. He claimed to be a prince from Senegal who was taken to Cuba and eventually freed. Then he came to Louisiana. He worked as a cotton roller until he was introduced to the Voodoo community and soon became a healer and a fortune teller. He's also the one who taught Voodoo. By the 20th century, Voodoo had declined and there were no longer any prominent Voodoo practitioners active in New Orleans. After the 1940s, there was no evidence Voodoo was being practiced in New Orleans. There are plenty of myths involving Voodooism. The main one is that Voodoo is evil devil worship. This has been put out as fact in the media. Disney even perpetrated this stereotype. In 2009, Disney released their first black princess, Tiana, in Louisiana. The storyline is about a voodoo curse. The villain of the movie is Dr. Facilier, based on Baron Samedi, who is actually the Haitian Loa, or spirit of death, resurrection, and fertility. He was not evil, but a deity. The movie is basically a walking stereotype based on racist ideals. Then in 2010, Haiti was hit by a devastating earthquake. Pat Robertson, this crappy pastor, said that the earthquake was God's retribution for Haitians practicing voodoo. He said that they made a pact with the devil to gain their independence from France. Voodoo followers do not worship the devil. This is not what the religion is about. This is a way to distract from the fact that their people were enslaved for centuries. The truth is that in voodooism, the devil does not exist. They believe in Bandai, meaning good God. So any other assumptions are rooted in racism and ignorance. Now another myth is that all they do is curses and spells. Their religion focuses on healing, spiritual guidance, and positive outcomes. A myth that is connected to this one is that practitioners are witch doctors. Practitioners are called servitors or servants of spirits. Priests are called Hungan, and priestesses are Mambo. They practice community healing, not practice witchcraft. Not that there would be anything wrong if they did. They are often confused with a cult. Voodoo is a recognized religion, a mix of African beliefs with Catholicism. They do not take advantage of the vulnerable, and no one is hurt or made to stay in the religion. Another belief is that zombies are part of a typical rituals. This could not be further from the truth. I think this is mostly used because it symbolizes the horrors and tragedy of slavery. Finally, the most widely believed myth is about voodoo dolls. This is mostly portrayed incorrectly in Hollywood, with dolls using pins to harm someone. Puppets or dolls are used very rarely, and when they are, it's for healing, protective, or as symbols, not malicious dark magic. I was actually looking into voodoo dolls and the history changes in different cultures. So I definitely want to make a video on this someday. Let me know and I'll put it on my list. St. John's Eve is celebrated on June 23rd every year around the world. This celebration was started by Marie Laveau in the 1830s on Bayou St. John. This included a head washing ritual combined with a public party. The International House Hotel has since adopted this practice. Each year there is a ritual at Bayou St. John in New Orleans. Voodooism remains in practice today, but rituals are usually held privately, probably due to harassment in the community. The only temple in New Orleans is called the Voodoo Spiritual Temple. This is located across the street from Congo Square. The New Orleans Historical Voodoo Museum is located in the French Quarter. This is a great place to learn about the history of voodooism. They also have an awesome website which helped me a lot in my research. Now it's time for my final thoughts. I think I have made my opinions very clear, but over time hysteria has occurred when you believe something other than the normal. I was actually surprised that there were no trials or hangings involved in this panic, especially since there seems to be a lot of satanic panic for the time. I enjoyed learning about the culture and religion in New Orleans. I have family from Louisiana, so I have enjoyed the food, but I'm white, so learning about the people who made the town was interesting, and also upsetting that whole culture was targeted by racism. I want to talk about history because it interests me, and we must discuss it and learn it so that it does not happen again. Remember, quote, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it, unquote. Now, how can stuff like this be avoided? Plain and simple, if people practice different religions, move on, get over it. Obviously, if it's a real cult like Jonestown or something, speak up. But that's not what this was. We have seen this time and time again. Think about Salem witch trials, the Holocaust, Islam, and satanic panic. The thing that makes the world the way it is a melting pot of different awesome cultures. Love each other. Thank you for learning about the real history of voodooism with me today. What do you think of all these misconceptions? I want to know your opinion, but please be respectful. If you're racist or straight up dick, you will be blocked on site. Comment, subscribe, and like. If you have any future cases you'd like me to cover, please request a case using my form in the description box. I will see you on Serial Killer Sunday when I discuss a freak out of Indiana. Until next time, stay curious, cautious, and safe. Bye.